right, 9-4B. Today, solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So we already did that, and this is the second part of that section. And so we could have done either of these in either order. I just kind of chose to do completing the square first, and now we're going to go on to square root property. So it should be short and sweet here. We're going to use the square root property to solve quadratics. So the first thing we have to look at is check to see if the trinomial can be written, or maybe it's already written as a perfect square binomial. And how do we check that? It might already be written for us, and that's real nice. If not, we got to look at, is C equal to 1/2 B squared? So we'll kind of look at that. That's the big question. If so, then we don't have to do any adding or subtracting on the inside or outside of the parentheses, and we can just kind of go with the square root. Okay? So after that, we can write as that perfect square binomial, x plus h squared equals k. And, you're probably going to have, it's probably going to be more likely to be plus k equals 0. And then, that's probably what you're going to see more often than not. And then after that, you would then isolate the parentheses. Okay? Which we talked about in the last section as well. Square root both sides of the equations, and don't forget about your positive and negative values. Remember, there were two answers for square roots, one positive, one negative, and then solve those two equations. So let's do some practice problems, because I think that's the easiest way to get through this. All right, this first one's all set to go. This one is already written in a perfect square binomial form. So the only thing we really have to do is take the square root of both sides. So take the square root of here and the square root here. Remember what that does. The square root of a square is going to get rid of that stuff. It's going to cancel each other out. So I'm going to be left with x plus 8 equals the square root of 16. Well, what is that? Remember, it's a positive 4, but also a negative 4. So positive, negative 4. So now I'm going to split that into two problems. I'm going to have x plus 8 equals positive 4. I'm going to have x plus 8 equals negative 4. And then when I solve this, to solve it the old-fashioned way, I'm going to subtract 8 from each side. And x equals a negative 4. Over here, I'm going to subtract 8 from each side. And x equals a negative 12. So those would be my two answers. Square root property. And that was already set to go for us. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. Number 2 is not already set up, but the one thing we can do to check, remember we have to take a look and say, is the C value already equal to 1/2 B squared? So in order to do that, we have to just take a look. What is our B value? Our B value is negative 6. So if I went ahead and said, okay, what's 1/2 of negative 6? Well, that's equal to negative 3. And then when I square that, I equal 9. Well, hey, that's 9 right there. So I'm in good shape. I'm going to put a little check mark, check. So we're good to go. So now I can jump right to the next thing and just write that in that perfect square binomial form, which remember we can use our factoring shortcut here. So really what it's looking like is my variable. Remember, I can put parentheses, and in here I can put my variable, which is C. And then in here, this part, I'm going to put my 1/2 of B, which is negative 3. So C minus 3, I'm going to square that, and that equals 81. Square root property is all ready to go now. So I take the square root of both sides. When I do that on the left side, it's going to undo the square root in the square. So I'm going to have C minus 3 equals the square root of 81. Now what are you going to get here? You're going to get a nice even number. Now sometimes you're going to get decimals, and that's all right. It's okay, but in this case, we're going to get a positive negative 9, because positive 9 squared is 81, Negative 9 squared is 81. So separate that into two problems. I've got c minus 3 equals positive 9. I've got c minus 3 equals negative 9. And then I solve the old-fashioned way by adding 3 to both sides. And then on the left here, I've got c equals 12. On the right, I've got c equals negative 6. So those would be my two solutions using the square root property. Okay, let's do one more because this one does have decimals here. We'll just get it set up for you, and then you can finish it off. But this one, again, we're checking. Can we do the square root property? Well, we have to check and see if our c value, 36, is already equal to our b value, 12, divided by 2 and squared. So let's go ahead and check that. What's 1/2 of 12? Well, that would be 6. And then when we square that, we get 36. So hey, it is. So we can check that, make the check mark. So now I can jump right to my factoring shortcut, which says use the variable y plus my half of b, which in this case was this plus 6 over here, squared equals 10. Now I'm looking to use the square root property. So that's going to undo over here. Y plus 6 equals the square root of 10. Well, you have to punch that in. It's not going to be nice this time. We know we're still going to have a positive negative answer. In this case, when you punch it in your calculator, you're going to get like 3.16. So now you've got two problems to do. You're going to have y plus 6 equals positive 3.16, and y plus 6 equals negative 3.16. And then you guys can finish those off by just subtracting 6 from each side. All right, that's it. It takes us to the lesson summary. How can you tell if a trinomial is already a perfect square and ready to go in parentheses? That's one way to look at it. And then we're also taking a look at what can we do? How do we do it? What do you know to use the shortcut factoring? What do you need to see? How do you see it? What do you do with it? And then the last one is just another problem to solve. X squared plus 5x plus 6.25 equals 49. Again, it doesn't matter that you have decimals. You should be okay to go with this one. Okay, and remember, if it works out with that half, with c equaling half of b, you don't have to add anything or subtract anything on inside and outside parentheses. Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed this one, and bring your stuff ready to go. See ya.